Welcome everyone, my name is Janet and I'm working through the book of Genesis in the King James's Bible. That's the version I'm reading, and today I'm covering chapters 38 to chapters 40. So I'm going to give my summary of each chapter. I've posted links under this video for each chapter, so if you don't have a book handy with you, you can check the accuracy there and get more detail, because there is a lot of detail in each chapter, as I keep saying as I go through this. Okay, so chapters 38. Now we're moving on from chapter 37, where Joseph basically was put into slavery by his brothers. They gave him to the Israelites and they took him to Egypt. So in chapter 38 we now see Judah, which is Joseph's older brother, fleeing the camp. He leaves. We don't know why, he just goes. So maybe he's got like feeling bad about what's happened to his brother. So he flees and he moves in with this person called Adullam. And there he lives for a while, and then he meets this woman called Shua, and she becomes his wife. And they have 3 children together. The firstborn is Ea, the second is Onan, and the third is Sheila. Now, the 3 boys, obviously the first one, Judah decides to find a wife for him. So he seeks out this woman called Tamar, and she becomes Ea's wife. Now, something in God's eyes sees a lot of evil in Ea. There must be something pretty dark and bad about him, because he ends up killing him. So Ea is no more, and in the tradition that means the next son down has to become the wife of Tamar, which is Onan. And he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want the responsibility. He doesn't want to get married, and he ends up sleeping with, he wants to sleep with her, so he sleeps with Tamar, but he doesn't get her pregnant. He refrains from doing that, and God sees this as not right, and he dies an early death. So that leaves the 3rd son, Sheila. Now Judah's starting to get a bit concerned, you know, for his sons' lives, because this is 2 gone, 1 left. And so he says to Tamar, look, he's still young, let's wait a while, and then when he's old enough, he can become your husband. So she does as Judah says and goes back to her father and lives as a widow until Sheila becomes old enough. Now during this time, Judah's wife dies, and he becomes very mournful and upset about this, and he delays, well, he pretty much doesn't follow his promise by giving Sheila as Tamar's husband. And she gets upset about this and finds out what's happened. Well, then she has a plot, and she decides to dress herself up as a prostitute. And when Judah comes to the town, she goes towards him and she seduces him. And he falls for it. He doesn't recognise her as Tamar because she's all dressed differently. And after sleeping with her, he says, look, I can't pay you. What I'll do is I'll go back and I'll bring something. And she said, no, I want some kind of compensation before you go, you know, some guarantee. So he gives her a wooden stick, he gives her a seal and a cord, and then he goes on his way. Now he gets back to his people and he gets a goat, and he says to one of his workers, take this goat for the prostitute in the village. So he takes this goat and tries to find the prostitute, but he can't find her anywhere. Tamar is actually hiding and is not seen. Now a few months pass, and Judah learns that his daughter-in-law, Tamar, has slept with someone and is pregnant. So she's gone against the oath of being a widow, and he's furious. He's so furious. So he calls for her to be brought to him, and he says he's going to burn her. And when she arrives there, they have all this wood ready to burn her. And when she arrived, she said, the person that slept with me owned this wooden stick, this seal, and this cord. And then Judah knows, oh, that's me. Uh-oh. And so he sees his wrongdoing. And he says to her, look, I'm sorry, I broke my promise to you. I didn't give you my son, Sheila, as I promised. and you've prostituted yourself, so we're both in the wrong, so let's just leave it at that. And he leaves her alone. And she ends up giving birth to 2 boys. Now, during the birth, one of the boys puts its hand out, and the midwife puts a scarlet bracelet around it to basically notify that he is the firstborn. But the hand goes back into the womb, and out comes the other brother. And that brother, the firstborn, is called Pharez, and the second baby that comes out is Zerah. So that's how we end chapter 38. So now we move on to chapter 39, and we go back to Joseph, who is a slave now for the Israelites in Egypt. And he is taken to Pharaoh's officer, Potiphar. He becomes his slave. And before long, because Joseph is blessed by the Lord, he is so efficient with his job that Potiphar ends up promoting him, and he has this then role of taking care of Potiphar's entire household. So he has huge responsibility and he does his job amazingly. But in his home, Potiphar's wife lives, and she's quite devious and she is seductive and she wants to sleep with Joseph. So she tries to entice him to sleep with her, but he is so of the Lord and follows all of the ways that he should live as a man. And he refuses. He totally refuses, to the point where he always ensures that someone is present so that he has a witness. And she gets angry about this. It really angers her that this is going on. So what she decides to do is hide in the house before Joseph gets there. And she hides somewhere, and then as he's on his own, she jumps out and then demands that he sleep with her. And he panics in this state, and he just runs and leaves the property. Now in running, he leaves his jacket, and she sees this and quickly thinks a devious plan and screams, "Help, help," and calls her servants, who come running in, and they say, "What's up?" And she said, "Joseph tried to rape me. He tried to rape me, and here's his jacket as evidence." And they totally fall for that. They believe it. And then when her husband comes home, Potiphar, she tells him the same story, and he also believes it too, to the point that he calls and gets Joseph and puts him into prison, into jail, saying that it was one of the best slaves that he had, but, you know, he's raped his wife now, tried to rape his wife now, so that's it. Now, while Joseph is in prison, the Lord doesn't forget him. And because he's blessed, he opens the warden's eyes to his innocence. And what the warden does is he grants him charge over the entire prison. So he's kind of like what he was doing at Potiphar's place, you know. He took charge of the whole place there. The same is happening now, but he's in the prison and he's going to be running things there. So that ends our chapter 39. So now we move on to chapter 40, and we stay with Joseph, who is about to interpret 2 dreams. So a few years have gone by, and Joseph has been doing really well at the jail, the prison. He's doing his job, as efficient as always, I would assume. And one day, 2 prisoners end up coming in to the jail. These are 2 royal officials that Pharaoh has got angry with. It's a baker and a butcher. And we don't know what the exact argument was, but they've been sent to jail. And they're there a while, and then this one night, they both have a dream on the same night, a very vivid dream. And they wake up in kind of a shock, like, oh, from what's happened, because it was so real. Now, at this point, Joseph comes in. He's got their breakfast, and he comes in to greet them, and he sees they're both like in this kind of shocked state. And he says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, we've both had these really like vivid dreams on the same night, and we don't have anyone here to interpret what it actually means." And Joseph said, "Well, that's God's job. You know, he's the one who interprets dreams." So he says, "If you tell me what your dreams were, I'll take them to God and I'll find out what they both mean. If he'll give the meanings to me, I will bring them back and explain them to you." And they're like, "Okay, great." So the butcher steps forward first and he tells him his dream. He says, I saw a vine of grapes and I was squeezing these grapes into a cup and then I gave this cup to the Pharaoh. That was his dream. And the baker said, I had this dream and I saw these 3 baskets of bread and there was lots of baked goods everywhere. And he said, and I had then this basket on my head of baked goods and these birds came down and they ate all of the goods in his basket. Okay, Joseph says, right? And he took those dreams to God and prayed, sent them to God and asked him if they would give him an interpretation of these dreams. What did they mean? And God granted him the interpretation. So he gives those to Joseph. And Joseph then goes towards the butler and he says, okay, here it is. This is what your dream means. And he said, in 3 days, you'll be released from prison and you'll go back to working for the Pharaoh and you will be serving him drinks. And the butler's like, oh, that's great. Brilliant news. Oh, thank you so much. And he said, well, you know, because I've given you this, if there's an opportunity for you to get me released from jail, please, will you get me released? And he's like, leaves that with the butler. Now the baker, he explains his meaning. He said, in 3 days' time, Pharaoh is going to have you killed and you're going to be placed on a pole and birds are going to come and eat the meat off your bones. Now the baker is just like not pleased at all with this, like who would be, hearing that? He's so upset. And so the 3 days pass and Pharaoh's soldiers come into the jail and they take the 2, the baker and the butcher, and they take them to this feast that Pharaoh is having for his birthday. And he's got all these people here and there's a lot of things going on. And he sends the butcher to go and get drinks, serve them drinks for the party. So off he gets told to done. And while this party is going on, the Pharaoh gets really bored and he's bored of things and he wants some kind of entertainment. So he decides to bring the baker. He wants him killed in front of him. That's what he says. I want the baker killed in front of me and I want him put on a pole and I want to watch the birds eat his flesh. And so that is what they do. They kill him, put him in front of this pole for entertainment, and the people around the Pharaoh are like just clapping and they're all like happy, and this is obviously sick entertainment for them. So that is how we end that chapter. It's kind of a very quick, blunt finish, like, to the story. So that ends our 3 chapters for today. So a lot of, gosh, an emotional roller coaster, wasn't that, going through those 3 stories. We've got Judah, his 3 sons, 2 killed for wrongdoings. The 3rd then waits while his father then does a wrongdoing by going off with his daughter-in-law, sleeping with her, unbeknowns, but even so, he's like mournful of his wife and then ends up, yeah, I guess, emotions, isn't it? You go off the wrong track when you allow your emotions to take hold and guide your life. That's when things slide. And I think Tamar as well, that's what happened to her. Her emotions got the best of her and then she plots and causes a huge mess as well. So that, I would say, wraps up our chapter 38. And then we have chapter 39, where we see Joseph being seduced by a woman, and when she doesn't get her way and her emotions start rising, she starts plotting and creating a story to basically just put Joseph in prison because she's not getting what she wants. Then we finalise the 3 chapters today with, Joseph doing his best again, doing really good work, and it shows there as well that, when you follow a higher source, when you follow and do the right thing, things work out. Doesn't matter what situation you land yourself in, things seem to be working on Joseph's side each time because he's keeping on that righteous path. That's what this is showing in the final chapter. But then we got the 2 that, the butler and the baker have got themselves, we don't really know why, they've ended up in prison, but it could be just that the pharaoh is just tired of them. You know, the way he's kind of like, oh, I'm bored after the feast, I'm going to now have one of them killed and watch him, like, for entertainment. It's so like a radical kind of crescendo emotional end that. So he's just going blatantly out and not feeling any consequence to what he has done. So there we have a very roller coaster of a ride, 3 chapters there, and we've got to look at these things and see how they can come into our lives and turn our lives for a better, or we can just, you know, acknowledge things in life and see reflections of things in life, how they affect everyday life today. So there we have it, 3 very emotional chapters, and how emotions can really push your life in very different directions. So for me, my lesson is to take hold of your emotions. Don't act when you're in an emotional place, you know, kind of like, yeah, because that can land you in some real hot water. So yeah, that's what I've taken from these 3 chapters. So I hope you've got something out of it too. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more of these videos, then please subscribe. And yeah, I'll be back tomorrow. See you all then. Thanks. Bye.